Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Things Metaphysical podcast. Today is April 19th, I believe.
I think so.
So, Kelly and I, of course, were talking about what we were going to talk about today. So, one of the things that we decided we should talk about, sorry, I'm hitting buttons, so that's why I'm looking over there, is change. And when you're kind of pushed to make changes, maybe from spirit, or you just have this desire to change, you know, how does one deal with that?
Well, the short answer is everyone deals according to their abilities to deal with it. But so many people lately have talked to me about change, things
Mhm.
happening, people transitioning, people not transitioning, you know, relationships falling apart, friendships falling apart. Um, I know three people who were fired in the last 2 days. Walk into work on Monday, which is not my favorite day of the week anyway, and walk in and be told to clean out your desk. A lot of times, what we associate change with something traumatic,
Mhm.
something that's really abrupt and a huge deal and a big unsettling thing. But change is really not always a bad thing. As human beings, we kind of give it that connotation. Um, we need to kind of shift about that. Even if it, I was talking to one of these people right before I logged into the show, and when you've gone through a relative with leukemia and a parent passing away, and then you walk into your job on Monday and it's not there, it's very, very frustrating. It's very, what do you do to overcome that? The first thing I always tell people is breathe.
Mhm.
you know Take a deep breath. It's Everyone's going through something right now. There's a lot of change around the planet.
Welcome to all of the people who are watching us live. We've been getting some comments. Hello, everybody. If you guys have questions while we're live, please feel free to put them in the comment section. We will be happy to answer them. I think change is scary for a lot of people. I think that it brings up a lot of insecurities and things for people. And just, in our world right now, to not have a job is scary. To not know how
Mhm.
you're going to live is a really scary thing. So when you lose your job, how do you deal with that? Because it's not like it's something you planned for. Like you go
Right,
in one
right.
day and they're just like,
Well, and the first thing everyone always says was you run back out there and get another one. Well, that's not always possible.
"Mm,
That's not the way the world works. If you're in a less congested area, then maybe there aren't as many opportunities for you. So, what I did when that happened to me 1.5 years ago, um, is I just started working for myself.
mhm,
It was, to me, it was like, oh, well, I only had this job for the money. I can make money anyway. And that was when I was in my 20s. That's exactly how I thought. And
mm,
I went out and started a real estate company. And then I went out and I bought laundromats
mhm."
and, vending machine routes. But at that time in my life, I was completely unstoppable. You couldn't
Mhm,
have told me I couldn't move around big vending machines. I had a business partner who was also my best friend, and we just did it. We
mhm.
were like, we don't need no job. What are you talking about, job? But these days, and as everyone goes through different changes in your life and different traumas in your life,
Mhm.
it becomes a little bit less easy and a little bit more of an issue. At this point, this person doesn't know what they're going to do. You
Well,
know,
and
it,
I think change isn't always about a job though, too,
right.
right? Like all of a sudden a friendship could change, you could lose somebody,
Yep.
something out of the blue happens. And sometimes for me, I'm like, okay, so what is spirit pushing me towards that I'm
Right.
not going willingly towards so that they're making it so that I need to follow this path because sometimes some of us don't follow our paths willingly.
Right,
So
right.
there will be things put in our place to make us pivot or turn in a different direction to maybe get us back on track.
Yeah, and that's the thing with everyone is ask yourself that question. A lot of the time we go into trauma mode if it's a
Mhm,
bad change, like losing your job
mhm,
or a relationship breaking up or a friendship break, whatever it is, a car accident can
mhm,
trigger it.
sure.
And we just go into that place where we're not really in touch with who we are spiritually.
Mhm,
It's like I heard a kid say this the other day at the park, and it just cracked me up. He had fallen, and everybody's running towards him, and he gets up and he goes, "Not now, angels! I'm doing something." And I was like, "Who is this kid? Where did he come from? Who are his parents?" And I'm looking around, going, "Where did he come from?" But that's kind of what we do
mhm,
when we are in that type of a shock change. We do kind of shut down.
mhm,
So that's the first thing is breathe and realize that the shutting down is not going to help you. Someone told me the other day, this is how nerdy I am. I was on a science chat board, um, and someone said the thing is they've studied this, and the gut reaction of emotional pain only lasts for 20 minutes in your brain and in your body. We draw it out. We go, I can't start feeling better now. That just happened. I'm still in pain. I'm still in pain. And that's the part of humanity that maybe we need to work on
mhm,
as a whole. Because if we are prolonging our own pain, well, then that's why people become afraid of change. And
mhm.
that's why people will do anything to avoid it. But I also think that people you can see what's coming and not be ready for it. So you're like, okay, yeah, I see it. I know. Okay, I see it. But I'm going to over here for a while. And that's the other thing we do.
Yeah, it's
But what
just
is it, the positive change?
it's a positive change. You know, I think that for me, some of the biggest changes in my life aren't necessarily changes that I wanted to make, but changes that I needed to make.
Hmm.
And I think it's always interesting when you look back because hindsight's 2020, right? We don't
Right,
always
right.
have all the information at the time when we're going through things, but when we look back, it's like, oh wow, boy, does that make sense now? Or I really understand why I was pushed to do that now, or I understand why all those circumstances lined up.
Yeah.
And at the time, we don't have all that information.
Right, right. And, that kind of, you have to trust
Mhm.
when you're going through something. I have had an incredibly frustrating week. And it's just been, all right, that's one more no that I don't have to look for. And I went back into sales mode
Mhm.
when I was in real estate sales. You kind of go out and you farm an area and it's like no, no, no. Okay, well, I figured out I could get 10 no's and then I'd be done with no's and then I could put a deal together. So I've kind of gone back to that mindset with building the Laley project. And okay, I've had 8 no's so far, 2 more and I'm going to get a yes. And that somehow makes it feel better.
Do you wanna tell people what the Laley project is? Because some of our viewers don't know what it is, and
um, I've I think I've talked about it on the show before, but it's this. It's a series of children's books. Basically, Layli is a little girl in Thailand. She gets bullied. She runs away from into the jungle. She makes friends with elephants, becomes a wildlife warrior, and she happens to be deaf. So after having 3 books in the whole series released, um, I was told to look at doing a film, and I have someone doing a network who does cartoons. I can't tell you what network that is, but they were interested in a cartoon project. So what that means is They do not come to you and say, "Look, here is $1 million. Take it and make us." They don't. That's not the way it happens in the real world. You have to do a fundraising thing,
Mhm.
and we're fundraising a lot of money. So it's been frustrating this week after having people contact me and tell me what a wonderful project it is, and then say no, they don't want it funded. It's like, oh, I guess it wasn't that wonderful project, was it?
And I think sometimes it's also about when you're told no or when an obstacle comes up, what are you going to do to persevere through it? Do you have
Right.
the stamina and the courage to continue to move forward? Or are you going to let that stop you dead in your tracks? I mean, I think
Well,
sometimes those are the choices, right?
right, right. And sometimes we need a diversion,
Mhm.
and that's what I did. I just went out and wrote in a completely different book. but but it sometimes we do need to give ourselves that diversion. I used to go for a walk all the time. There was a joke in my younger days with people who knew me that because I kept my shoes right inside my door. I don't like shoes.
Mhm.
Um, and they could tell if they came in the door and the dog and that one pair of running shoes were gone, I'd had a bad day. And I would always go for a run and go for a long walk and come back. And if somebody had noticed that, I'd come back to, somebody had brought dinner or somebody had brought a bottle of wine or whatever, because I had surrounded by a really good group of people then. Most of them, unfortunately, have transitioned now. But yeah, that was my diversion then. My diversion today is just read a completely different book. Um, Not everyone has that. I'm aware of that. Someone said, "Congratulations, thank you." Um, that's how I do it.
Mhm.
I have some clients that are athletes and they do entirely different things. They don't go for a run because that's what they do. They don't want to feel like they're still working. So they'll go doing something entirely different. I have one particular friend that just goes fishing. And he's like, that's it. Can't do any more going fishing. But I think it's important to realize when we've hit that wall, instead of really, really dwelling on the frustration,
Mhm.
you have to find a diversion. You have to, or you won't move forward. You'll be stuck.
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes it's just harder than others. And sometimes we're so in it that we can't see that there's a solution out of it.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think oftentimes that happens. So, one of the things that people have talked to me a lot about this week is crystals and the role of crystals in people's lives and how to use, my favorite topic.
Right.
Um, because I just got a new crystal, so it's really interesting. So I'm just curious, out of anyone who's watching us live, does anyone else have the ability to talk to crystals or get messages from crystals? Because I think it's really interesting when they start talking. So,
Yeah, it
um,
is. It is. Um, Back when I had a bookstore, I did sell crystals, and I will never forget when a little girl came in and I had, the bins of the loose
mhm,
polished stones, and she would sit there and she'd put her hand in, and I watched her, and one of my employees was like, "She's gonna steal," and she wasn't stealing anything, but she'd hold her hand over them, and her mom came back and she said, "Well, have you found one?" And she says, "Well, that one's really angry." So I'm going to do this one. And that was the first time I'd seen a child have that ability. But yeah, it's interesting when you can hear them.
I had a friend of mine whose daughter, when she was little, all the crystals had a smell. Like one smelled like strawberries, and
Hmm.
they all smelled different to her. And so that was really interesting too. And again, the reason that I bring that up is it's about embracing whatever the gift is, right?
Right,
We all have had those abilities, but as you grow up in society, you lose some of them because you become focused on other things. It doesn't
right.
mean they're not still there. It's just about reopening them again.
Yeah.
I like to make crystal grids. So, I have so many crystal grids in my apartment because when I moved, I've told this story. When I moved in, my apartment is directly across from the elevator, and every week the elevator was going out. And, and they're like, "I don't know what's happening. This has never happened here before." And so I made a crystal grid to put closest to the where the elevator is, and then it stopped doing that. So that was that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So one of our viewers wrote, "Okay, now I want to go smell my crystals and see
Yeah.
what happens." And then someone wrote, "I do agree that they can store a guided meditation to listen to later. I learned that recently and believe this to be true."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, it's about the little things. It's also about like let if we move crystals aside for a minute, how many times are you like in a quiet space and you'll hear something and you'll be like, "I didn't really hear that." Or, you're driving and when you're in that kind of monotony of driving, you tend to get messages because your brain is very focused on driving and keeping you safe. So it frees up like you're not getting in your own way. It's almost like a meditative state.
Yeah.
I used to get entire lectures when I used to drive for work. It was the funniest thing. So, it's just being open to whatever the experience is for you.
Yeah, make sure you do stay safe though if you're driving. I once drove from San Francisco to Austin, Texas, and I don't remember much of it at all. And that was really scary. It was if you drove it straight through, it was a 27-hour drive. I made it in 24 and a half hours, and I don't remember it. So be careful. Be careful. I was
Well,
just
it
saying.
is always important to be safe while driving. But, everyone has had that experience where you're on the highway and all of a sudden you're 5, like, exits up and you're like, "Where have I been for the last, like, 10"
Mhm.
but you've been driving, so it's really interesting, and that's what I always tell people to practice grounding skills. Like, if you notice you're kinda spacing out a little bit while driving, I'm always like, "Okay, can I feel my butt in the seat? What do I see out my front window? What do I see out
Right.
my back window? What do I hear? What do I smell?" And sometimes while driving, especially on long road trips, you need to do that frequently.
Yeah, someone's talking about being clairaudient.
Mhm.
Um, Yeah, you go through times where some days are very, very active and others are not so active. What I find is sort of refer to that as a shift change.
Mhm.
Now, with me, when it's very active and then all of a sudden it's very quiet, then it comes active again. I've noticed that the energies are different, like they're different guides coming in. So it may be what you're experiencing.
I have a
It,
question for you, Kelly.
mhm.
So, do you think that
Not often.
okay, have you ever had the experience that everyone who's here on earth has a purpose? And I think that some of when you're getting messages and not getting messages, and the frequency of the messages and the intensity of the messages are based on if this is in line with what your purpose is. And the reason I say that is I'm very connected to which is funny because I'm not grounded, but I'm very connected to the earth and everything that goes on in the earth. And I always know when something's going to happen, whether it's a natural disaster or all the loss of lives and all the natural disasters. I feel it before it happens. So I think depending on what your kind of purpose is, and one of the reasons is like why you're here, I also think that plays a role. And then also is that, we all come from different cosmic backgrounds, so to say.
Right.
Like some people, God, I can't believe we're talking about this, but some people have more of an angelic presence, like they
Mhm.
resonate with angels. Some people resonate with guides more. Some people resonate with, I can't call them aliens because they've told me to call them multidimensional beings.
Yeah, multidimensional beings or
Some
UAPs,
people
yes.
resonate with that. And so I think all of that plays a role into then how we translate that into human beings and who we are.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
That was a little deep. I didn't mean to go that deep.
That's all right. Um, Recently, there have been new energies
Mhm.
around the earth. And these are energies that have thrown off people who have studied these energies for eons. And everyone was kind of going, what? What is this? What is this? And until we relax into it and breathe into the new energies, it's going to be a little chaotic, I think, for a lot of people. Even people who don't believe any of this are going to find that things are becoming a little bit more of a challenge than they usually are, a little bit more frustrating than they usually are. So try not to read too much into it when you're realizing that something is off, because something is off. That's
So
why you feel that way.
I'm going to digress back to crystals for a minute.
Oh,
So, and we've talked about this, and I think we've talked about it on the show. Every now and then, I'm told I need to get a new, like, pendant to wear, necklace to wear. And so it happened again recently. And so I was looking at different ones, and I had ideas of what I wanted. Didn't end up with any of that. Ended up with a stone. I was like on this wild goose chase, and I ended up in the store. I'm like, I've never seen this crystal before, but that's the one I'm supposed to have. And so I think it's also about trusting those impulses and those instincts, because I'm like, that's not the color I wanted. That is not
right.
what I wanted. And then, we were laughing because I was telling you my experience came yesterday. And this crystal, and the reason I brought up this whole conversation is because this crystal is very talkative. Like, and it has directed me what I needed to do with it before I even put it on. So I just thought it was really funny. So, any thoughts about that?
I've had that happen with different stones that I've had. Um, Usually, when I used to go to like crystal stores,
Mhm,
which I don't even know if there is one near me now, um, it would be funny because I would walk through and my friend who worked there would look at me and she would say you could see the necklaces all waving when I walked through, and the same one day kept jumping off and
mhm.
it'd be on the floor, and I'm like, that's weird. Put it back up, jump off. Entirely different side of the store, the necklace is jumping off, so I had to buy that one, of course. But yeah, crystals can be fun. You have to be really calm when you first start working with them, or you will trigger some different kinds of energies you're probably not wanting to release.
Mm. Someone asked if they could see my new necklace.
Mhm.
I was, I've never been told this before. I was told no. That
Nice.
this one
Wonder
just,
why.
I think it's the energy of what this is that it's not for me to share. So, but I'm not trying to be like to not keep things from people. But they said this one is actually just for me. So,
Someone mentioned an ocelot animal guide.
mhm,
Um, any kind of feline is a very powerful totem animal to have. Ocelot, in particular, is about overcoming things, about like climbing your mountain. Ocelots are generally found in hilly kind of areas with a lot of trees, subtropical, semi-tropical. Um, so that's a really
don't
powerful
they come like from an Egyptian background?
ocelots. Ocelots are here where I live, but it's just a wild cat. They used to be widespread across the southern parts of the United States until people in their infinite idiocy decided they didn't belong here. But that is a very powerful totem animal. I share that totem animal with you. It's good to work with after you're quiet and calm, because that is one of the very few cats that is more calming and more quiet and helps you contemplate everything uh,
Mhm.
than a lot of other cats. So yay, good for you. That was my brief foray into the shamanic world. I'm back
Yeah,
now. Hi.
it's funny. I know, like, I think it was last year when we were doing the show. It was like every week I was telling you there was a new spirit animal with me.
Yeah.
I think I went through giraffes and manatees, and So it's just really interesting. I haven't had that happen in quite a while. I haven't had a spirit animal come in for quite a while now.
Yeah. Yeah, I have them all the time, but because there are so many animals around me all the time,
Mhm.
the funny thing to me is when the ocelot spirit guide comes through, all of my other cats practically salute. And they don't do that often. They usually scatter, they usually run away from them.
Mhm.
But something about this particular spirit animal, they really, really are attracted to. I'll have to look into that.
Interesting.
It's, yeah.
So, those of you who are watching us live, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments section and we will do our best to answer them. I'm trying to think if anything else has, happened. I mean, as much as I love being in the metaphysical world, lately I've had to be very much in the physical world. I have a lot of things going on in my life that I've with family members that I've had to take care of. And so a lot
Right.
of my energy has been going into that. And it's always interesting because like I went through a period where I didn't create any mandalas for like 3 or 4 weeks, which is very unusual for
Uh,
me. So I know in the last week or 2 weeks or so, I've drawn a lot again. So that's always, it's like people say, well, how do you know? How do you get? I think when you're overwhelmed and stressed, oftentimes you don't get a lot of intuition or creativity at those times because you're focused on so many other things. So it's must mean that things are finally, thank God, slowing down a little bit for me so that I could actually take time to draw again,
yeah.
which is always very healing for me.
Yeah. You need that. You do need that.
Well, that and humanity, because the energy comes through me for the earth. So, it's my way of being of service to
Yeah.
others, I think. One of my ways.
I think all of us are of service in some capacity all of the time.
Mhm.
I was looking at a story online earlier about a guy who lost his wallet in the grocery store somewhere, and the person behind him paid for his groceries while they looked for it. And that person was of service, even though they were saying it was no big deal. Anytime you are kind to someone, smile at a stranger, buy something for a homeless person, that is being of service.
Mhm.
And we don't give ourselves enough credit for the kindness that we do every single day. And yeah, everybody has a bad day. That's why somebody else is going to be kind today. I think we do share that as humanity.
Yeah,
I think.
pretty cool. There's still so much good in the world. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it is so difficult. Like, I try not to watch the news all that much anymore, but every time I turn on the news, there's another mass shooting in the United States. I mean, it's
Yeah.
bananas.
People getting killed. Yeah. It's just, I think for a long time, people have sat back and done nothing.
Mhm.
And now we don't have that luxury anymore. Now we have to step up and do something, even if it is only giving change to a homeless person.
Mhm.
Even it can be the smallest thing. Smiling at a stranger doesn't cost you anything, but we need to do more of that now more than ever with the new energies on the planet. Things are going to be intensified, maybe. So if you're putting out frustration and hate and vindictiveness and all of that crap that I see periodically on social media, that's what you're intensifying. So try to do more that's not that.
Mhm.
I'm not saying you don't have to become a saint. I'm saying, please, think about what you're doing, think about your energy, think about what you're putting out into the universe. And I'm really tired of saying that on the show, so I'll stop.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, I just, there's just so much going on. There's so many different things that can get talked about, can get discussed. Sometimes it's impossible to know where to start because there's just so much going on.
One of the things that I've seen a lot of kids lately because I'm getting children to talk about the Laley books.
Mhm.
So I've been around kids a lot more than I normally am lately. And I've seen them talk about things their teachers are teaching them. And it's all about, they had a whole week on how they can be kind. A whole week. The teacher talked about throughout the whole day, throughout every lesson. This teacher was talking about, now how can we be kind about this? And some of these kids were like, well, we can help our friends who don't understand, or we can what I read something about books, and it was just really inspiring to me. So I think humanity is probably going to be okay. It's sort of, you know, made me think we're not doomed, at least for a while. But it doesn't take anything. It really doesn't take anything. So watch the kids, because this group of kids, that at least that I've experienced, they kind of got it. They kind of get it. They get it.
Mhm. Yeah, so kindness is important. Um, Random acts of kindness. Anything else that you want to talk about tonight, or
No, I'm seeing blue orbs everywhere. So, someone is getting my attention. Um, One thing that came up on a paranormal investigation I was part of recently is, there are too many paranormal investigating shows apparently, because people are thinking, oh, hey, I watched a show, I can be a paranormal investigator. No, no, you cannot. And there has been a rash of people inadvertently releasing things because they aren't sure what they're doing. There's been a rash lately of people having entities follow them home because they didn't know what they were doing. So don't do that. There is training involved. There really is. I know it looks easy. I know it even looks funny, but I know a lot of the people doing those shows, and it's the stuff that they cut out that I think they really should make a bigger deal about, and they just don't. So don't think you know everything, because you do not know. That's my PSA about the paranormal world for this week.
all right, everybody. I think we'll call this one a show. Have a good night. We will be back in a couple weeks. If anything comes up between now and then, please feel free to reach out to Kelly or myself, and we will see you guys all again really soon. Bye.
Bye.